this death, this destruction.
Global news impacts us.
We have to change the way we live. This is why we need independent media.
Cheers and salutations. Welcome to another episode of Hard Lens Media. We're starting our week off right here, and today we got ourselves an epic show. Shout out to our viewing audience. Shout out to our audience members who watch us on Can TV. We got ourselves an epic show for you today, and I'm proud to introduce these two individuals. They've been making the rounds all over independent media. They've been making their voices heard. They're also working on what I think personally is the beginning of a very interesting documentary that they are going to be working on. You know them. You've seen them on Revolutionary Blackout Network. First time joining us here at Hard Lens Media, and also special shout out to Jose Vega for even introducing us to them. Give it up for Keaton West and Russell Dubar of Due Dissidence. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us here at Hard Lens Media. For our viewers and subscribers, first give us an introduction to who you are as filmmakers, as content creators, as commentators. How'd you guys get started with Due Dissidence? What was the big brainstorm idea to get this great show of yours happening?
Well, thank you, Kit, for having us. Great to be here. Absolutely. We started this as an audio podcast and blog back in March of 2019. So we're actually going over 4 years at this point. We've only been on YouTube seriously for about a year. We started out just doing audio shows and writing articles. You know, I started this basically after being convinced by a friend of mine to start recording my political thoughts and putting them out there. A friend of mine and I, we would talk about all this stuff, you know, politics and whatnot, for hours on the phone every week. And he said, hey, you know, Keaton, rather than drive yourself crazy with all this stuff and only have me as an outlet, why don't you just record some of these monologues, some talks and things, and put them out as an audio podcast and see what happens, right? What do you have to lose? So I said, okay, sure. So I started the podcast in March 2019 with a friend of mine named Richie Rosencrans, actually. And he couldn't do the podcast much anymore. It became pretty clear a few months in that he was more of an activist than a loudmouth. You know, like we would be doing recordings and he'd be like, well, I actually have a organizing meeting that I have to go to, so I can't do this one, I can't do that one, which is fine. I mean, he's a great guy. You know, what he does is certainly much more noble than what we do here, running our mouth and cracking jokes on a mic. But so
I almost got hit by a cowbell, man. Speak for yourself.
That's true. Actually, Russ has put himself in harm's way now. We're actually starting to do more on the ground stuff, actually. But I came to know Russell online. Actually, we were just Facebook friends. In fact, we weren't even Facebook friends for the first year we knew each other. We both had a mutual friend during the 2016 primary who was a real sort of hillbot. And Russell and I would sort of pile on his wall when he would make a stupid post. And we would find that, hey, we are liking a lot of each other's comments and adding to each other's points. So we eventually friended up. And then I had this sort of blog site that I was running in association with the audio show. And I noticed that Russ's writing, even when he was just shit posting, I noticed that for shit posting, it was really good writing. It was very strong writing. So I invited him to submit some articles to the site, which he did. And then, of course, we used those articles as fodder for podcast conversations. So then I started inviting him on the show, and we would have these hour-long talks about the things that he was writing about. And it became pretty obvious pretty quickly that we made a good team. And so we just started doing audio shows together for a couple of years. And we had decent growth on the audio show, but we realized after that point that to take it to the next level, we needed to be on YouTube. We needed to start doing videos. And so we did. And about a year later, yeah, here we are, 8,500 subs, not too bad. So we're doing the best we can. That's basically our project. So yeah, we are on YouTube, Rumble, Rockfin, all the audio players still, and we still have our Substack, duedissidence.substack.com. And now we have, thanks to our friend Jacob, who is a fan of the show, he just basically took it upon himself to create a great website for us. So now we have a great website that links to all of our different outlets, duedissidence.com.
Yes, and let me actually go ahead and pull up this outstanding website here too. Again, this is Due Dissidence.
Well, this is the one, yeah.
Yes, so this is their work. So please be sure to support their content. They're doing phenomenal work, especially when it comes down to covering current live events. So let's just go ahead and cross this river with because you again, Russell, you mentioned how you put yourself on the line. Now, the thing is, I want to play this video. This video has been hitting the rounds. Everyone on social media has been talking about, from Hardlands Media, RBN, Jimmy Dore Show, etc. And before we do play it, look, Hardlands Media started off back in the day on the streets of Chicago with a Galaxy S7 cell phone, and we were covering protests, especially at the height of the Trump-Pence administration. Here in Chicago would be rallying at the Daily Center or the Federal Plaza, and then march to Trump Tower across the river. They'd say their speeches and then go home. And it eventually turned out to be a nothing burger when I infamously walked out of line and I saw them all get herded into a little sheep pen, because that's where they all go. They get herded by the cops into a sheep pen. And that's when I lost all respect. And I began calling the social justice warriors the social warrior industrial complex. Social justice.
Yeah.
So
if I'm remembering right, it was the Bush administration that came up with that innovation. The idea that you could put people in pens at protests. Was that the Bushies who came up with that?
Well, I do know that after Bush Jr., when Obama got into office, everyone got fat and started drinking mimosas, and that's how we lost habeas corpus, went from 2 wars to 7. And of course, the people who caused the 2008 economic collapse to basically get away. We have to look forward, not backwards. Obama out. So that's the truth of it. So before I play this video,
vote.
And by the way, I know we're on public access Chicago TV. So hello to Chicago. You guys, congratulations, are getting the DNC back in town 2024, right?
Yes, exactly. We're going
1968 again. Let's go. Let's get it going.
I hope we're gonna see some of that spirit we saw on Michigan Avenue the other night for the visiting delegations.
Well, there's 2 things that could happen here in Chicago. It's either the infamous 1968 DNC convention or the Cringe Fest DNC convention of 1996.
That's right. Yeah.
So it could go either way. It's either 1968 or it's just going to be one big circle jerk of
I was trying to
saw in 96.
Yeah, I mean, it's more likely the latter, since just as in 96 you have an incumbent Democrat in office. It's probably going to be pretty tame. Wishful thinking on my part, you know.
I don't know. Have you seen the videos of Michigan Avenue the other night?
Yeah, there was a lot of. There's currently a lot of instability here in the city, but before because I would like to talk about the DNC convention after this, but I'm noticing because this does correlate and relate to what's going to be happening in 2024, and that is there's going to be a presidential election cycle, and Trump obviously is going to be running in the Republican primary, and so many people have Trump derangement syndrome. So Russell, I want to give the floor to you. Now, you went out to cover this event where you have the fake resistance saying we got to lock up Donald Trump. He is Hitler 2.0. He's going to destroy democracy and the republic will be gone forever. First, how did you hear about this event before we play the video? And then number 2, what is the overall general feeling on the ground, especially when it comes down to talking about somebody like Trump, who's, in my opinion, has been turned into this Saturday morning cartoon villain. All the while we have politicians doing far worse crimes than he's doing. Russell, I'm going to start off with you.
Well, I had a theory and I went out to prove it, and it got proved beyond my wildest dreams. My theory, so this was the day of the Trump indictment. That's why all these people were there.
Yeah.
So everyone was down by Manhattan Criminal Court. My theory was that if you asked Mick Resistance Libs if we should lock up George Bush, they would be opposed to the idea. And that if you asked MAGA people, they'd be much more open to it, or at the very least, not as hostile to the idea of locking up George Bush. Now, that was my theory. I went down there planning to ask the question, should we lock up George Bush next, of blue MAGA and red MAGA? And my theory was proven right beyond my wildest dreams, because they didn't just hem and haw about locking up George Bush. They went berserk at the question. When I asked MAGA people, they ranged from yes, definitely, they should all be locked up, Cheney too, to not agreeing, but being willing to have a debate. These people don't have a debate. Language is violence. You're violating their space. You should, right? Like their whole philosophy is a philosophy of emotional diarrhea.
Oh, God. All right. Well, speaking of emotional diarrhea, let's actually see it play in firsthand. And again, folks, just so everybody knows, before we play this video, Trump used to be a Democrat and gave money to a lot of Democratic politicians. And Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl. If you don't know who Goldwater is, he's a Republican. Look him up. She supported him back in the day.
So do you think he'll be found guilty?
If justice is served, he sure will be, for this and all the other crimes that he's accused of.
So do you think we should arrest George Bush next?
Why? What is about this? What's this whataboutism? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, but should we? I mean, if we're going to hold people accountable.
You know better than that?
You don't think we should?
I'm not going to be baited by you. I don't care what you think.
Okay, so you don't think we should arrest George Bush for war crimes?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. What do you think? Do you feel that he should be arrested?
If a grand jury of average New Yorkers indicts him, then he should be arrested. Exactly.
Well, you know, Michelle.
Now, I want to continue on, but, you know, the fact that CNN and MSNBC, even when Trump was being indicted, said that the evidence is weak, and that even then, the person in question, Stormy Daniels, still has to pay Trump money. So, in other words, there's a very good chance that Trump's going to walk away from this.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if it gets thrown out.
Keaton, go ahead. I want to make sure you
go
add
ahead,
commentary.
Keaton, sorry.
No, it was just there's a very, very minor point, but I think she was ordered to pay him 120 grand, and the hush money payment in questions for 130 grand. So Trump's already got almost all his money back. Number one, and number two, if there's a possibility it could get thrown out. Yeah.
Well, she from what I understand, she didn't let him finish.
Well,
maybe that explains it.
Well, then, yeah. So in other words, either way, Stormy Daniels is getting boned by Trump. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Michelle Obama called her partner in crime.
Oh, you're going after a black woman now, of course, because you're clearly a white supremacist.
So do you think that's why?
So you have to demonize the black woman, try to get a white crime.
So if you criticize Candace Owens, you're a white supremacist?
In your audience.
What if you criticize Candace Owens?
Is universally respected, whereas Candace Owens is a pathetic drifter.
Right. What if you This is what happens when you
I feel sorry for your eardrums, Russell. I truly do. Can you still hear us, Russell? Russell, can you hear us?
I'm starting to get my hearing back in my left ear. The right, not so much.
But that choice, because Russell was there himself, I wasn't there for this. That choice to go in front of the camera at that moment and just create this amazingly funny video where you have a cowbell in one ear and a bullhorn in the other ear, like that visual makes the video. It really does. It really does. And the visual of this guy pulling the bullhorn out of nowhere, it's like a Looney Tunes cartoon where like Bugs Bunny will not have anything and then he'll like pull a hammer out of nowhere. Yeah, that's like where that bullhorn just comes in, and like within a second of seeing it, it's in your face. It's like a cartoon. It's like Bugs Bunny.
So then also you're also getting pushed back too by these same quote unquote resistors who say, "Oh no, we're going to lose our free press. Oh no, we're going to lose our democracy. Oh no, Trump's going to destroy everything." But yet here, very later on, they're going to be pushing you away.
asking stupid questions? They cannot answer. Well, this is a public place. I can do whatever I want.
I'm just going to ask you to take a step back.
Well, you have no right to do that.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
You're in my space, and I'm going to ask you.
You're in my space. I'm not in your space.
He got in your space.
Yep. I asked if we should arrest George Bush. They went crazy. I guess they like George Bush. Are you guys Republicans? Are you Republicans? Like, why do you not want to arrest George Bush? You know what? That sounds smarter than you do. So, do you think we should arrest George Bush?
Look at this one.
No answers on that? You don't know if we should arrest George Bush? You're not sure? You know, Michelle Obama called him her partner in crime. I think she was saying, let's arrest him. Are we arresting George Bush next? I hope so. He's guilty of war crimes. Do we care about that?
They
so
don't.
So honest question, should we arrest George Bush?
Oh my God. God almighty. I don't know how you went through that, Russell, but dude, I have to commend you for a job well done, for a video that's not only entertaining but informative. So I want to get your just a couple more commentary on this. When the filming stopped, did anyone come at you or aggressively harass you afterwards? Because let's face it, it's easy for everyone to be brave in a crowd, to be holding their banners and their posters, but then when the cameras are off, people do change, or there's maybe somebody might step up to confront you. Was there any kind of confrontation afterwards?
Well, this is an edited down part of the video, but what the woman with the cropped hair, she did that twice, where she literally walked up to me and accused me of getting in her space. This is what liberals do. It's a tactic they use of safety, right? It's a safety issue. You're in my space. And then she kept trying to do that and then realizing she was on camera, so she couldn't get away with it. She wasn't going to be able to tell the cops that I walked up. That's what she was trying to do. She was hoping to create a confrontation that she could somehow claim that I had gotten aggressive with her. I had gotten in her space. But you can see on the camera, it's ludicrous because this is a cut version. You can see her walking up to me repeatedly and going, please step out of my space.
So basically she walks.
Yes.
Walks. This is a terrible
Walks
reaction.
up and sticks her hand out. Please get out of my
Get out of my face. Oh my God. So here's the thing. When I look at a lot of the protests, looking back between 2016 and 2020 with the Trump presidency, and even now as this indictment, I look at these protests in two ways. One, this is a way in which people can put meaning in their meaningless lives, because it's the only way they can feel gratified in being part of something that's maybe makes them feel better about themselves. And then number two,
that's why all these people, if you talk to them, they're such pathetic specimens. We actually, when we covered this on the show, that's what I said. These are all people. Can you imagine who would be friends with people like this? How would you get someone to hang out with you unless you joined a cult? That's what all this is. It's all cultish thinking. And who joins cults? People who feel socially isolated, people who feel empty, people who have emotional problems. These people are not well. I mean, look at them. This is what the MAGA person I asked across the street, who's in the more extended video. I asked her, should we lock up George Bush? She said, oh, yes, definitely. So what about Cheney? She said, oh, yeah, they should all be locked up. And then I told her what had happened to me across the street. I said, I asked them about George Bush, and they're supposed to be on the left. That should be an easy question, right? And they went crazy. So you didn't go crazy. She said, that's because I'm not insane. like that's what was so revealing about it. And that's what I was trying to find. Look, the MAGA people, I don't agree with them. That's why I'm not one of them. That's why I don't join them. That's why I don't promote them. Are they more reachable than these? Yes. If you had a choice, who can you talk into Medicare for all? Them.
Keaton, I want to get your commentary on that, because if I could add in here one other thing here as well, especially when it comes down to seeing a lot of these activists who say that they're part of a resistance rise up against Trump. I remember seeing some posts of individuals like this who say, oh, if I was born in the Civil War era, I would have been one of the good ones to help the slaves get to the North. Or if I lived in World War II Europe, I would have been one of the good people to help the Jews escape from this SS and the Third Reich. I mean, is this a thing? People are just fantasy living, or just living through a fantasy of trying to be a resistance fighter, even though they probably wouldn't even have what it took to even live during those times? Keaton, I want to get your thoughts.
Well, yeah, sure thing. I mean, look, fighting to free the slaves during the Civil War era, fighting to free the Jews pre-World War II, during World War II, obviously. Those would all involve a degree of risk. And the difference here is that resisting Trump is a no-risk situation. In fact, it's the complete opposite. Resisting Trump means embracing things like the CIA, the FBI, right? The corporate media, right? I mean, Trump, despite becoming president, was never a mainstream figure that represented established and entrenched power. And I know a lot of people on the left even give me shit when I say that. Well, what do you mean? You know, he assassinated Soleimani. He armed Ukrainians. Okay, listen, there's a reason this war didn't break out until after he was gone. All right. And the whole resistance to Trump is basically it's a corporate funded endeavor. The entire thing was. None of it actually challenges power. Now you have MAGA world sticking up for this 21-year-old kid who leaked the Ukraine war documents. MAGA world is calling him a hero. He is a hero. Of course he's a fucking hero. It's a no-brainer, right?
Right.
But they are being branded by the left or left of center, center left, whatever you want to call it. I know that's a big semantical thing, right? But liberal media is on the side that this guy belongs in jail. We are going to do a show later on this evening. We can't play Stephen Colbert clips on the air because CBS is just really awful about copyright stuff. They block videos.
Absolutely. They are.
But he did a joke that the guy was reading a book, Jack Teixeira. Is it Jack or Jake? I've been out of the loop the past 3 days because I've been moving. So I'm researching this.
That's
like today.
That's
actually.
Understandable. You won't get canceled by Hardlands Media for moving.
But Colbert said he was reading a book when the feds got him, and they put a joke on the screen. The book was called Solitary Confinement for Dummies, and the audience laugh, laugh, laugh. So these people are not liberals. They are blue MAGA. They are the fascist side of the coin. They're just blue team fascists. They're Democrat fascists.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I'm sorry if I'm rambling here.
No,
but,
that's fine. Go ahead.
Resisting Trump is something that the powers that be encourage you to do. Therefore, there's no risk involved in doing it. Whereas fighting for the Union side during the Civil War, you could argue the political establishment was somewhat on the Union side as well, but there was risk there. You could get your fucking head blown off. Right? Defying the Nazis was dangerous. Defying Trump is nothing. All you need is a smartphone and a few jackasses to laugh at your little unfunny smartass tweets. That's all it is. And so, yes, these people have delusions of grandeur about what they would do in some other time. What's that cowbell guy going to do? Nothing. He couldn't even answer, should Bush be in jail? Should Bush be arrested? I don't know. Why? What do you mean, why? You're out here protesting a hush money payment to a porn star, and you don't understand why George Bush belongs in prison also for crimes infinitely graver than that? I mean, these people are just a joke, and that's one of the reasons why that video kind of went viral, because, as you said, Kit, it is not only entertaining, but it is very informative. It shows these people for who they are, and one of the points that we've been making on the show since we started is that Democratic voters are much of the problem because they are the ones who are they are represented there. That's a more comical, more exaggerated version of the average Democratic primary voter. But there's a reason why the Bernie campaigns failed to break through. Part of that was shenanigans at the top. Sure, obviously, there's a multitude of evidence for that. But there's also a multitude of evidence for the fact that the voters themselves are dumb as shit. And that guy represents that. I mean, I'm sorry. We can't let the voters off the hook either. They're the ones who vote for these fucking people.
Exactly. So one other thing here, too, when we look at least what's been happening under the presidential administration, because let's face it, and I hate saying this, but it needs to be drilled into people's heads and just how bad things are. Corporate media and the two-party system, the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment, have done a phenomenal job in brainwashing a majority of Americans to accept the system as is and just to go along with it. And a lot of people are slowly becoming aware of just how we've been screwed over decades by these politicians. And yes, look, we have been very critical of Democrats because it's easy to go after Republican lawmakers. I mean, let's face it, Ronald Reagan, Bush Sr., Bush Jr., Trump, everyone's turned them out to be like these evil men of tyrants who just almost destroyed the republic. But the thing is, they would be foaming at the mouth if they could have gotten away with what Bill Clinton and Obama did. Under Bill Clinton, we got rid of Glass-Steagall. We got rid of all the Wall Street regulations. We got rid of, again, the idea of us having a true democracy. I mean, the Telecoms Act, the crime bill, and the fact that even Bill Clinton kind of sort of maybe apologized for that devastating bill. Joe Biden has yet to really acknowledge what he did. Hell, he's proud of that crime bill that systematically went after Black and Latino communities and helped bring up the prison industrial complex. Everybody ignores the fact that under Obama, the people who caused the 2008 economic collapse are still walking around living their best lives. We went from 2 wars to 7. We got rid of habeas corpus. Journalists and whistleblowers were detained under that man's watch, and more children were deported. Hell, the kids in cages happened under Obama. And now we got Biden, who's supposed to be returning the soul back to America. The kids are still in cages, and the Kamala and the Biden-Harris administration are still carrying on with a lot of Trump's foreign and domestic policy. So nothing has truly fundamentally changed. And the fact
you have to give him credit. He fulfilled his campaign promise. He promised nothing would fundamentally change.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I was proving.
Give him that.
All right. Well done, Russell. Russell commanding the floor here at Hard Len's Media. So with all of this, with this film work that you're doing, it's this podcast, with the show you guys are doing, you're also now stepping into another area, and that is filming the Dissident documentary. And you're actually interviewing a good friend of the show, Jose Vega, in regards to his work. And I want to play one of his videos here. This one is probably the most epic of ones. And not only was it Jose Vega, but it was all of his other colleagues and friends too, confronting Democratic politicians, most notably Nancy Pelosi.
Pelosi, that's a very good place for you in the depths of hell, because there's very bad obsession of getting us into war. Hey, why is it that you did not admit that there were no WMDs in Iraq? You lied us into a war in Iraq. You got us into an invasion of Afghanistan. Now over 90% of those people are impoverished and are dying. But to tell the truth about Nord Stream, why did we destroy Nord Stream? We're leaving millions of Germans without energy. You have a knack of getting us into war. People like you should be arrested. You are a war criminal.
Hey, Congresswoman! I came to see a warmonger, but you're a fat old drunk. You went to Taiwan where you looked for Ukraine. You blew up the Nord Stream on accident or on purpose. Did you know about that?
Okay, well, hold on. I gotta pause right here because I interviewed Jose about this. There's this guy here in his button-up shirt saying, "Hey a-hole, hey a-hole." Like he's acting all tough. Like yeah. No, he is. He's saying that, Jose. So watch. Hold on, I'm rewinding it. So there he is, the guy in the button-up shirt. He's there, all right, sitting down. Then he stands up. Listen, he's gonna call, and then he sits down. So he acts like a tough guy, and then sits down. Like honestly, a no balls punk.
Stream on accident or on purpose. Did you know about that? Aren't you supposed to be part of the indictment tomorrow?
Because he knows Jose would fold him like an end table.
Pelosi, you got some nerve.
Damn. So shout out to Jose Vega.
There's like their Citizen Kane in this video.
Yeah, no. Are you kidding me? It's a work of art. I think the AOC video is by far the creme de la creme. But nonetheless, you guys are working on a documentary series, and I want to just play a short behind the scenes video. I asked you guys if this was okay to play, so I want to just play this right here.
Okay, that's a good direction. Stay where you are and just move. Okay, all right, Russell, ask your follow up.
So there are a lot of people today trying to argue that classical culture is white, that it's for specifically white people, that it favors white people, that it was created by a very oppressive culture. So how would you respond to that?
Beethoven didn't want his music to be in concert halls. He didn't want it to be only for the exclusive or for his patrons. If he were alive today, he'd want it in the streets of Harlem. Classical culture is universal to every human being. Shakespeare understood that. Beethoven understood that. Francisco Goya understood that. All classical culture, if people just decided to dive into it and really understand it and study it, they would see the jokes that they would find in Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote are funny today as they were funny 500 years ago. You know, you can go see a Shakespeare play and you will be shook to your core, or you will be laughing, or you'll be crying, just as people were almost 500 years ago. I mean, or you could listen to Beethoven's Ninth, you know, the Ode to Joy, the Ante Freude, and you'll be in tears, and you'll be just as moved as people were when it first premiered, you know, back in the early 1800s. This is for everyone, and the people making it knew it was for everyone.
Now, I know there's a little bit more to this. So I guess in regards to that scene from behind the scenes context, and not actually you guys give everything away to the video that you're working on, but what led up to that question? And also number two, what made you pick Jose in particular? I mean, obviously, I think we all know Jose has been a firebrand in regards to calling out all politicians, Democrat and Republican, due to their excessive insiders trading and, of course, the military-industrial complex. And plus, these politicians have been in power for decades upon decades, which, again, they've done far more worse things than Trump has ever done. But nonetheless, what led you guys to pick Jose to talk to be part of your documentary series, and what led up to that question in regards to classic culture? And then number three, what even inspired you guys to make this documentary series? So I guess Keaton, can we start off with you, and then Russell add in as well?
Sure thing, yeah. Well, when the AOC video went viral, we reached out to Jose pretty much immediately. I think we were the first YouTube show to interview him after that went viral. I think he was on an audio show the night prior. But I know that when that video went viral, a lot of people in our sort of indie left media space praised him for it. Some didn't. You know, some of the more, fakers, the haters, I won't mention the names, they sort of gave him a hard time about it. But most of the people in our space sort of said, hey, that was a great thing to do. But there was this thing where they always put this caveat in because it was out there that he was part of the LaRouche movement. And everybody felt a need to sort of qualify their support of his action with the caveat, well, we don't agree with him on everything and we're not LaRouchers, blah, blah, blah. So we decided we wanted to interview him. He came on with Kynan, who was the first guy in that video, the, Depths of Hell guy. Great guy also.
Shout out to Kynan. Shout out to Kynan. He's been on the show as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And we interviewed them, and we noticed immediately, what struck me immediately was how smart they were, how funny they were, how normal they were. These didn't seem like cult members to me. First of all, the idea that Democratic Party loyalists would be lecturing anyone else about being in a cult is hilarious. The Democratic Party is the cult at this point, right? So that's just number one. But I found them to be really, really interesting, funny, very smart guys, very independent thinkers. And part of researching for that interview led me to come to know that Jose was a Trump voter in 2016, turned AOC supporter in 2018 because of something that happened in his life, which we'll talk about in the doc, obviously. And he voted for Trump again in 2020, despite having soured on him. And now he's this anti-war protester. I came to learn before he was a Trump voter in 2016, he was actually a Sanders guy. So it's this very, very interesting political evolution, this very interesting sort of arc of a guy who goes from Bernie bro to Trumper to AOC supporter to voting for Trump again to now railing against the war and those who fund it. It's a very interesting story, and it's a person who cannot be, as he said on your show when he talked about this, cannot be put in a neat little box in terms of what his views are. And then there's this whole LaRouche thing that's sort of a backdrop to all of it, and that's where the classical culture section comes in, and I'll toss to Russ for that because Russ asked that follow-up. But one of the things we've tried to talk about on our show a lot is the breaking down of conventional political boundaries, right? What constitutes left right now? What constitutes right now? Is the center actually the center? The center seems pretty fucking radical to most people, right? Funding World War III doesn't seem like a centrist idea. That seems like an extreme radical idea. But because people in power say that's the center, that becomes the center because that's where those boundaries are set. So Jose is someone who just defies all of that. And so we thought it would be really interesting not to just feature and showcase and promote his anti-war activism, which is extremely noble work right now, but I think doing an in-depth interview with him and really getting a sense of his story and how his politics grew and evolved and how they responded to the evolving politics of the time, I thought that warranted a proper film, not just a podcast interview. I thought that warranted something a bit more formal and a bit more serious. And so we interviewed him for 4 hours. We're going to be cutting that together in the coming weeks. We'll hope to have the film out over the summertime sometime. But yeah, we think it's just a really interesting story about a really interesting guy who's doing God's work now. And so we're very, very excited for it. But in terms of the question that you just played, Russell zeroed in on that. That has something to do with Jose's sort of LaRouche background, but I'll toss to Russ for that part.
Okay, go ahead, Russell. Take it away. And then I have a couple more questions to ask you guys, too, because, I mean, again, you guys have been doing some great work in regards towards the independent media community. So, Russell, take it away.
There's something connected to the LaRouche movement, and I don't claim to be an expert in this, but they have something called the Schiller Institute that really focuses on giving people what was once termed a classical education, right? Teaching them the Greek and Roman classics, teaching them Beethoven, teaching them classical music, teaching them the great philosophers. And by coincidence, about 2 days before this interview, I had actually had an exchange somewhat with our own viewers because I am deeply skeptical of this attempt to discredit the entire Western canon and the whole of Western civilization as racist. I think you could do that with China. You could do it with the Arab world. Like, if you want to do that, you could throw out everybody's culture. I think it's throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I posited the theory on the air. I don't think it's a coincidence that all of a sudden, at a time that people became too smartphone addled to read Moby Dick, that reading Moby Dick came into question. I think it's an excuse for the fact that people have lost the powers of concentration to read classical literature. So this went back and forth a little bit with some of the viewers who were a little hurt by it. And here's this young kid who, because he fell into this Schiller Institute, has cultivated that concentration, has cultivated this focus. And he's not a straight white man. He's a person of color, right? So I thought it would be interesting to ask somebody who's in that demographic, who does not fit this cliche, to explain what the value is of studying this. And his answer was I thought amazing. I thought that was a great answer. And that's essentially what I want to convey, to take some part of the human cultural achievement, whether it would be Egyptian, whether it would be the Islamic world, whether it would be classical Chinese culture, to take some part of the human family and rule their cultural achievements out of bounds. You're just denying yourself something that can be very enriching. I agree with the idea of not elevating it above other cultural achievements, but to ban it or to denigrate it in that way, I don't think that's the direction we should be going in.
Here's the thing. It's important to understand all literature, to look at all aspects of culture and history. And look, I'm against cancel culture and censorship, because as soon as you start censoring and canceling everything, you're opening yourself to be canceled. And the thing is, when we look at all empires, including our own, and I really would recommend this to our viewers. There's a YouTube channel called Fall of Civilization Podcast that covers all the various empires throughout antiquity, not just in Europe, but all over the world.
Oh, that sounds great.
I haven't heard of that. I'll have to check that out myself.
Oh, yes, it's a very great series. My favorite.
That's right up our alley.
My two favorite podcasts of that has been the Byzantium one, where the fall of the Byzantine Empire, and then Easter Isle. And yes, the stone giants possibly maybe walked to their location. All right. And no, that's not ancient aliens, but more on the point when it comes down to fall of civilizations. And that is, the stories are shockingly the same in regards to how they rise and how these empires do fall. And the thing is, I think for the United States, we're at a very dangerous crossroad to where we could end up like all these great nations before us. And the thing is, the people who we expect to fight don't fight as hard as we do. Case in point, I got to bring this up here, Senator Bernie Sanders, who not once but twice allowed the DNC to commit election fraud, to deny him the nomination. And he willingly threw his revolution, his support, his supporters under the bus when there was election fraud taking place, and voting stations were shut down, polling places shut down, lack of paper ballots, people being kicked off the Democratic registry because they were going to vote for Bernie. All these things were happening, and people waiting in line 8 hours, 10 hours just to vote. Just
California.
To vote. And again, ballots missing here in Illinois. I mean, come on, Chicago's a world heavyweight champion in regards to ballots disappearing. But this is a thing that happened. We are. All right. Chicago's the most corrupt city. Add in DC, then we're number 2. So we're number 1 if you don't add in DC. But I want to ask you this. Has Bernie Sanders systematically destroyed any kind of progressive movement left? What is the overall damage? Is it salvageable? Russell, will start off as you, Keenan, as well, because the thing is, it's important for us to look at the aftermath of both of his campaigns and where this movement's going. Because again, if you were to ask Republican voters, hey, how do you feel about Medicare for all or student debt forgiveness? A lot of people would be surprised. Like, yeah, I would like Medicare for all. Yeah, student debt sounds good. Again, no one talks about the fact that there were Republican voters that would willingly support Bernie Sanders. That's something that corporate media didn't acknowledge in 2016 and didn't acknowledge in 2020. Russell, we'll start off with you, and then Keen, I want to get your commentary as well. Take it away, Russell.
Well, you know how very often they'll pull out these old episodes of The Simpsons. It's kind of a meme. The Simpsons was right. Jimmy Dore was right. Jimmy Dore was way out ahead. I know, but way out ahead of the curve. I lived in Chicago for a year and a half. That was the worst weather I've ever experienced on planet Earth.
Oh, come on.
Come on, man. That winter,
the cold there is just aggressive.
It's evil. It wants to kill you. That town is trying to kill you. But I haven't been there in a really long time. But I think the Sanders movement is a very mixed bag. On the one hand, let's face it, we all are probably here because of it. Right. I mean, we've all splintered and fragmented and gone off in different directions. But it was really the Sanders campaign that showed everyone for a minute that it's possible. Maybe it's possible. And for several decades, even for a Gen Xer, I had never seen anything like that. I always say about Bernie, there was a guy like Bernie in every presidential campaign I remember. There's always that guy, Al Sharpton or Paul Tsongas. There's always that guy who goes up there and bucks the establishment. And it's kind of an amusement. And the media, they're never a real threat. And the media is like, yeah, they're great. It's, with these ideas. And, they get 3% and they bow out and they endorse the candidate. And that's it. Sanders was it came up in such a strange environment. The winds had shifted so heavily. And I really think that's because of Barack Obama, because Barack Obama sold everyone on hope and change, gave them more of the same. So people had been radicalized by the time you got to 2016. And Bernie Sanders, I believe, was the last chance to get the public to believe in the system as currently constructed. It was the last chance to keep people in the tent of believing in this American democratic project. When that went down, they went for Trump. That was it. And I come from a working class neighborhood, and as a result, what you're talking about, I knew this was coming because I know working class people, and I talked to them about the election. Some of them would have voted for Bernie. Some of them like Trump. I didn't talk to one person from my hometown who was willing to walk into a voting booth and vote for Hillary Clinton. And even though I'm from New York, this might surprise some people, but I've lived around the country. Working class people in Queens are not that different from working class people in Iowa. They're not that different from working class people in Florida. When I saw that, I said, Trump's theory that there's a hidden vote for him, it's probably correct. It's probably correct.
Before I hand it over to you, Keen, because I want to get your thoughts on the Sanders movement and its long-lasting impact. You know, when I was in Philly for the convention and I saw Bernie Sanders supporters and Green Party people being assaulted violently by Clinton supporters and Democratic establishment hack frauds, and we were interviewing delegates whose stories were all the same. Hey, we're being assaulted. Hey, we're being spit on. Hey, we're being attacked. All this.
In regards to that, I just want to interject very quickly, because this has been coming up in some of the other things we're covering. When you look at who's really committing political violence, it's mostly coming from the establishment side, which makes sense because they know they can do it with impunity. They're not going to prosecute those people. If our side does it, we're going to jail. They know they can do it, so they do it. So I'm sorry to cut in. But.
No, that's fine, because I know when I walked out of the Wells Fargo Center in Philly after seeing that, it was like one of those moments, like in a cartoon show or or like in a dramatic TV series where like the character like has like that out of body experience. They realize something's going to happen. I realized there's a good chance Trump's going to freaking win this thing. Oh my, he could really pull this off. And when I was sharing that with people, I was given all sorts of names. My colleague Daniel, he was verbally attacked by a lot of people that we knew and respected. And it was just it was really an odd time, because again, if Bernie were to get the nominee, things maybe could have been different. Talk about an epic debate, Trump versus Bernie. That would have been primetime TV ratings. That's lost forever. So Keen, I want to get your thoughts on the Bernie Sanders movement, its impact. Is it as devastating as a lot of people say it is, that's destroyed the movement? Or I want to get your thoughts. Follow up on what Russell said.
Yeah, I mean, I think his chance to do something really special came and went in 2016, precisely because there was that climate that Russ was just talking about, where you had this populist zeitgeist in the air, and there were a lot of people who liked both Bernie and Trump. In 2016, by bowing out, endorsing the Democratic ticket, that drove a lot of that populist support to Trump. I think 12% of Bernie voters in the primary voted for Trump in the general. So by 2020, that real sort of populist core of his support was gone, because the 12% of Sanders' 2016 primary voters who defected to Trump, they were now Trump voters in 2020. They were no longer available to his 2020 primary campaign, which is why the 2020 primary campaign was a lot normier than the 2016 one, because it had to be. People thought that was a flaw in his strategy. And I said, well, no, not really, because given what he did in 2016, he no longer had this broad populist appeal anymore, not to nearly the same extent that he had in 2016. And so the opportunity was then. So yes, if he had said to the DNC and to the Democratic ticket, go to hell, you guys screwed me, you screwed my movement, I'm either running as an independent or I'm just sitting this out, I am not endorsing you either way, I am remaining independent of this system and of this process, that could have done something. And I say could have because there's no guarantee that that would have happened either. You know, as we've seen in the past few years, there are a lot of people in this space, as Russ would say, they are shit libs who happen to be for Medicare for all, right? Like, they have some of the progressive Bernie policies, but at the end of the day, their sensibilities are such that they are not comfortable with talk of revolution, and they are completely illiterate when it comes to building working class power in the forms of strikes, actions, mutual aid, right? They are obsessed with the election process as a means to solve every problem that exists. Marianne Williamson campaign, and people prop that up, right? That's what we're talking about. And so was there this opportunity to really shake things up? Yes and no. I mean, yes, there was a chance there that it could have happened, that something big could have happened had he told the Democrats to go to hell in the summer of 2016. That's 6 years in the rearview mirror now, 7 years actually. Jesus, time flies.
Yeah, it does.
So, when we're talking about evaluating the effects of the Sanders movement, I think what Russell said is absolutely true. This whole independent media ecosystem would not exist in its current form were it not for him. There are certain gains that grew out of that. A lot of the Starbucks workers who are unionizing now got their start in the Bernie movement. So that there are some positive outcomes from it. As far as the negatives, yeah, I think we will never know what could have been had he refused to fall in line in 2016. So in that sense, I would say maybe it's been devastating, but maybe not, because a lot of people voted for him because they like Medicare for all. But at the end of the day, they are still inside the system, very establishment aligned and oriented people. And so that would be my answer. I would say perhaps yes, perhaps no. Sorry, I know that's a boring answer, but that's how I feel.
we could what if the scenario as much as we want.
Exactly,
Obviously, look, going into 2020, I and my colleague Daniel, we I think a lot of us assumed that Bernie would have been ready in 2020 with after all he saw in 2016. I really thought that they would be up, trained up, ready to deal with the DNC corruption, and it fizzled away. And talk about a situation tailor-made by the gods where you could fight for Medicare for all was to hide the pandemic and talk about it. But nope, he didn't. And then comes that infamous Super Tuesday where Obama made the phone call, Buttigieg, Klobuchar drop out of the race, endorse Biden. Bernie keeps on calling Biden his good friend. And we're here now.
Well, look, I mean, I have to come back to the cowbell people, right? Because that is ultimately a huge barrier. And that's why the Sanders strategy in 2020, despite it being unsuccessful, I thought was actually the best option they had available to them. It's the only strategy that could have worked because the Bernie to Trump voters of 2016 were now Trump voters, right? So you now had to do this entirely within the Democratic Party system and within their voter base, right? And so there's no way to win over 60% of Democratic primary voters when people like the cowbell guy are so overly represented in the Democratic Party, right?
True.
So the only way you can do it is to put a ton of boots on the ground in the early states, win them, and then win them with 30 to 35 points, right? Not with 50. And then trust that by winning those first few states, you will get that momentum. They'll have that air of sort of inevitability around your campaign. Okay, this is going to be the nominee. And then you bend the cowbell people. Not a very woke metaphor, but anyway. You break
you are
their
canceled,
will.
Sir.
Yeah, canceled. Yeah, well, especially anyway. You break the cowbell people by saying, okay, now you have to vote for me because now I'm the nominee, and we can't have a dragged out primary process because that helps Trump. And the thing that scares them most is helping Trump, right? So that was the idea, right? The idea was win the first few states and hope that momentum carries you into Super Tuesday. That's why he couldn't talk shit about Russiagate. He couldn't talk shit about impeachment, right? He couldn't define Democratic orthodoxy because ultimately he needed those voters to, at the end of the day, hold their nose and vote for him. And if he pushed them too far, they wouldn't. Of course, the design flaw in that plan is that you can't really get momentum unless the media gives it to you. And the media was never, no matter what, going to give Bernie Sanders any momentum, ever, because they'd rather Trump win than him. And so they were never going to bend the knee and say, okay, I guess this is the guy. And not only did the media, I mean, you notice as soon as he won that Nevada primary, he very, very stupidly went on the 60 Minutes. That was a terrible, terrible idea. Whoever recommended he go on 60 Minutes is a fucking moron. Because that's when Anderson Cooper shivved him with that Fidel Castro question. And now he's arguing about that during the week when he should be out touting his landslide victory in Nevada. But anyway, the point is the momentum evaporated like that because the media determines whether you have momentum and they can take it away from you. And so they took it away. And Obama, nail in the coffin with that phone call, boom, there you are.
And that's it. All other things aside. Everything else aside, you cannot have a progressive movement win in a party where its voters are such garbage that Barack Obama has a veto.
Right.
How are you going to win? How are you going to win? Because they're never going to get behind your candidate. So if all it takes is MSNBC and Barack Obama in coordination giving the thumbs down to your candidate, you're wasting your time. So don't talk to me about Marianne Williamson. Don't talk to me about RFK Jr. I know some people, you're running as a Democrat. It's an enormous waste of our time, energy, and resources. You know what? Give that money and time to the railroad workers. Give that money and time to the Starbucks workers. Give that money and time to the people of East Palestine. Fuck the Democratic Party. Fuck these people. Fuck the grifters who try to sheepdog us into this. And fuck the people in the YouTube space who are trying to jack up their subscribers because they can't think of another way to do it than to sheepdog you into one of these completely futile nonsense campaigns.
You mean Dime Store Eminem? I mean Kyle Kalinske. Sorry.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, though, I mean, what you're speaking to is again truth to power, and that is the fact that, look, we've seen it happen not once but twice, and then when you have the likes of Peter Dow or Peter Dole, however you say his name, moaning and complaining that Marianne Williamson is not being acknowledged by the media, dude, this is not your first rodeo.
You're right, exactly.
You remember what they did to your boy Bernie? You remember what they did to your friend Bernie?
Just amazing. It's like but this is what I mean. Like, so many people in that Bernie 2016 movement, as much as that was a very important movement and it had potential, I think, pardon me, to be a historically important movement, there are a lot of people in there like Peter Dow who are just going to fall for this shit over and over again because, look, this sort of goes to a point that I made earlier, which is like, so many people in this space cannot conceive of politics outside of elections and primaries and voting and things like that. And so they're just forced into this same narrative. And look, to fall for it a second time was bad enough. A lot of us knew what we were getting into in that second campaign, but we're like, you know what? This time Bernie's not going into it as some unknown outsider with 15 people on lawn chairs at his first rally. This time he's actually going into this a top tier candidate. So let's give it a shot. It's the last best shot we have. We've got no better idea, whatever. Once that fails, you're going to do this a third time with Marianne Williamson? I mean, are you kidding me? How fucking stupid do you have to be? How fucking brain dead do you have to be?
This time
again and make the same arguments. Oh, they're leaving her out of the poll. They're ignoring her. Then, oh my God. It's like, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing.
Actually, I'm going to make a controversial statement here. What the establishment's doing to Marianne Williamson is tame compared to what they did to Tulsi. I mean, come on. I mean, seriously.
Well, that, yeah.
I mean, it's like it speaks upon itself, and it's even tamer than what they did to Bernie. I mean, let's face it. Marianne Williamson.
Well, because Tulsi was a threat.
Yeah. Well, again,
Tulsi checked a lot of boxes. Marianne Williamson is a Topanga Canyon joke.
Yes, and the thing is, when even there was a candidate who's running for Congress in South Carolina. Yes, in South Carolina, when he was confronting her and talking to her as a supporter when it came down to talk about reparations, she just snapped at him for no goddamn reason.
We covered that.
And again, it just says a lot about running in the Democratic Party, people being propped up into something that they're not. Marianne Williamson is not the next Bernie Sanders. She's being manufactured that way by people on larger YouTube commentary channels that like to prop up people. And eventually, look, there's going to be that breaking point. Maybe this election cycle, maybe this one will be different. Who knows? But again, Trump's going to be running again. He's going to be in the election, and the establishment is probably going to be grateful because he brings views to corporate media. The social justice warrior industrial complex will be grateful because, again, they could start doing their rallies and protesting and GoFundMes so they can make money. So Trump is the biggest job producer, again, in media and in the online internet political commentary space because, again, people need Trump because he brings them the views, all the while ignoring the fact that the politicians who've been in power are the ones that are really screwing us over. I mean, Nancy's been in power for decades and she's doing insider trading. Dianne Feinstein, who's senile, has been doing insider trading. All these politicians, all of them, Democrat and Republican, have been doing more crimes than Trump ever did. And these are the people who are held in high esteem. So as a final note for our viewers and subscribers, because I know it's morning where you guys are at, and I definitely want to ask you just two more questions. So this first final question is, where can people follow you guys online on social media? And also, we do want to say to people who are perhaps waiting in wings, who, you know, maybe want to do what you guys are doing, but maybe are a little bit afraid, because it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there. It takes a lot of courage to deal with cowbells and bullhorns blowing in your ear. So where can people go?
Well, people can go, they can just put us in on YouTube once you're done watching this show, obviously, and no sooner. Make sure you watch the rest of Kit's show here, but just look us up on YouTube, Due Dissidence. Also, duedissidence.substack.com. That's a great place to find us as well. You could sign up for free on Substack, join our email list. We also have Substack. You could sign up as a paid subscriber and help keep us going. Patreon, things like that. But yeah, YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, we are on all those places. So yeah, make sure you find us there and keep in touch. Absolutely. In terms of advice for people who want to do this, look, it's I find like this stuff now, like creating an online media channel, it's like playing the harmonica, right? It's the easiest thing to do, hardest thing to master, right? I mean, you know, you have to be disciplined at it. Not that we're in any position to give advice because we're not a huge channel, but yeah, look, I mean, in terms of being afraid of consequences, it depends on who you are and what line of work you're in. Russell and I are both fortunate enough to be able to hustle out livings as independent contractors without, you know, needing to sort of integrate ourselves into some network of white collared, you know, shit lib douchebags, right? If you're in that space, it's a little harder. But I've always been of the opinion, like, what's the point? Like, I would never choose a life for myself that would hamstring me in terms of what I could say outside of work. And so many people choose a line of work where they're like, oh, I can't say this because what if someone at my job hears that? I would never take a job like that, because to me, you only get one life to live, and if you can't say what you think, then what's the point of living it? So I guess everybody's different in that way. But I would say, you know, I can't really speak to like what risks people should and shouldn't be willing to take in terms of how their online speech affects their life outside of that. I just happen to choose a life where I didn't have to worry about that. And if you can do that, I would say do that. I guess that would be my biggest piece of advice. Sort of make yourself uncancelable so you can say whatever the hell you want.
So when people ask for the management, you just smile at them and say, I am the management. Russell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, most of the people I know who are in that position, you see, it's not human nature to live believing one thing and saying another. It creates too much cognitive dissonance. So what will happen is usually people who have to survive in those spaces, they brainwash themselves. They convince themselves they believe it too. So you'll find very few people in spaces like that who actually allow themselves to think independently. I do hear from them once in a while. They'll send their like IM messages in a bottle, like, I wish I could say what you say. But most of them just knuckle under to that ideology. But all that to say, hey kids, are you an obnoxious prick who's lost half their friends on Facebook because of your political opinions? Then you might have a future in independent media.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a great note to end it on. Gentlemen, you two are working on a lot of great projects. Please follow Due Dissidence. I'm looking forward to your documentary series. I would like to actually...
It's actually, I mean, it will be one film.
Oh,
like
one
this.
film. Sorry.
We might make more documentaries in the future, but the Jose Vega thing is going to be like one standalone, probably 60 to 80 minute film. Yeah.
Well, then done deal. Here's the thing. The door is open for you two to return back onto this show because I've had a lot of fun. So please stay in contact because I would like to have you guys back on as returning guests. There's a lot to talk about, especially with the DNC convention that's going to be happening here in Chicago. And perhaps we could save that for another episode. So let's because I wanted to talk about it right now, but obviously we're running short on time. So as a final question, I'd say yes or no. Which is far more superior, Chicago style pizza or New York style? And we all know it's Chicago style. Chicago style, yes.
Don't even start.
I saw our friend Chris Bishop posted that in the chat earlier. And first of all, Kit, our door's open to you as well. We'd love to have you on our show also.
Yes, please.
Done deal.
I'm a pizza lover. I'm not a pizza snob. Okay. I appreciate great New York pizza. I love great New York pizza. New York pizza is amazing. I'm not above eating a gas station slice if it looks good. Sam's Club has very good pizza. Very, very good pizza. I like the conveyor belt cheap fake pizza. And I like Chicago deep dish pizza as well. Now, people say, well, Chicago deep dish pizza, it's good, but it's not pizza. The reason people say it's not real pizza, kid, as I'm sure you probably know, because you probably had this argument with quite a few people.
That's very hateful speech, by the way. Very hateful.
Violence, right. In New York, pizza is not just a food. Pizza is an experience. You have to be able to grab a quick slice and hustle down the street, fold it up, and eat it while you're on the way to catch a train. So in that sense, Chicago-style pizza is not real pizza in that you don't experience it in nearly the same way because it's a time investment, right? New York pizza is a cigarette. Chicago pizza is a cigar. Cigarette, you light it quick. Okay, step on it, get in the cab, right? Cigar is different. It takes an hour to smoke a cigar. You got to sit and relax with it and enjoy it. Cigars are great, okay? Chicago deep dish pizza is great, but it's not the same thing.
Yep. That is a good way to put it. And unlike Keaton, I've actually lived in your town. Yeah, look, it's not bad. Like
I've eaten the real thing. I've eaten the real thing. I haven't lived there, but I've been there a few times.
Like most places, New Yorkers, when we have pizza outside of New York, it's only because as New Yorkers, we have a civic responsibility to report on what's bad about everyone else's pizza. So we try it just to come back and explain how bad it was in Texas or how bad it was in London. Once in a while, you'll get a city where they actually have good pizza, but it's still not New York pizza. So I'm definitely in the, that's not pizza. It's a pizza inspired lasagna kind of a thing.
So hateful.
But it's not exactly pizza. It's like if every time I wanted, when I lived in Chicago, I felt like every time I wanted pizza, I had to order lasagna. That's what it's like to me.
Well, you know what? Here's me with something like bullhorn or cowbell. And and obviously that was the most hate-filled thing I ever heard. Shout out to Due Dissidence. You guys, I gotta have you back.
You come to New York, I'll take you for some slices.
Yeah, I've been to New York. Yes, I've been to New York, and I do hope to come back there again. So I will hold you to that. Number two, I gotta get you guys back on the show. So I'm gonna send you a message later tonight to see if we could have you back on, because I do want to talk about the DNC convention happening here in Chicago and a few other things here as well. You guys have been doing great work. Keaton, Russell, don't stop what you're doing, folks. Keep on winning. Keep on speaking truth to power. Don't stop. And to everyone else that's watching, we will continue on with the rest of our main show after this short little commercial break. You two guys, take care of yourselves.
You too, man. Thank you. Great to see you.
Done deal.
Thank you.
Hoped you would never find out, know that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I've tried to block the light out, know you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you
I really want to set you free, but I really want to let you be. And a part of me wished I could set myself aside, just let you take the ride, just chalk the rest up to destiny. I could let you believe that the only restraints in life are the size of your dreams. Let you believe each kid grows up with the world at their feet. When I know too well it's open season, I know they're taking stock and raising stocks and raising stock. And I'm simply not here to sit and watch as you learn the lesson all cogs are taught. Keep your head down and keep to task and just keep on blocking the rest of it all out. Just keep on with the rest of the herd of a million adjacent oblivious workers. The forest unseen for the trees, and the trees unseen for the fallout. Now what's more damning, baby, the truth or the ignorance? Fuck it, I honestly wonder if I see the answer so well. Baby, believe me well, I know it's scary, I scare myself. If I could find a way out of my head, I would run like hell. I would ditch this body politic, mindless occupant somewhere far from the dismal abyss. In the tranquil crystalline bliss of the beach, I could rest with the rest of the shells. And if anyone asks I'm anywhere else, if I'm really needed, just light the candle, then read the book, and then ring the bell. Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth and then demand 1,000-fold. It's full of greedy pigs who'll eat you out of house and home. They'll strip your bank account and sweep you somewhere down the road, and then return to eat your tent and shitty bike you rode. Your bottled water, only shoes and coat and broken phone. Then smiling in your face, they'll tell you that the shelter's closed.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I tried to block the light out, knew you could feel its glow. I bet you're holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you
Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul. This world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth, then demand 1,000-fold. I tried to block the light just so I could keep you close.